The sun filtered through the wide glass windows of a trendy downtown cafe, casting long shadows on the polished oak table where Adrian sat, fingers laced tightly with those of his wife, Lila. Across from them, sipping an emerald-colored matcha smoothie and wearing oversized sunglasses indoors, was his younger sister, Serafina. "I mean, of course you can still come," Serafina said, her voice airy and detached, like she was deciding between candle scents. "But Lila. She just doesn't fit the aesthetic. You understand, right?" Adrian blinked. Serafina leaned forward as if whispering a secret. "It's not personal. It's visual cohesion. We're going for an elevated rustic chic thing. Very Tuscan elegance. Picture perfect, Vogue-level storytelling, you know?" Lila sat perfectly still. Her back straight, her shoulders taut, her eyes fixed on a single scratch on the tabletop. Her cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment, but from holding back the storm she longed to release. Adrian knew that look. He turned to his sister, whose phone had already reappeared in her hand, scrolling past floral arrangements and dress inspirations like they were sacred texts. "You're banning my wife from your wedding," he said evenly. Serafina raised an eyebrow without looking up. "No, I'm editing the guest list." And just like that, Lila stood up. "Let's go," she said quietly, her voice strained but firm. Adrian didn't say another word. Neither did Serafina. Nor their mother, who had been silently sitting in the corner, pretending to be absorbed in a bridal magazine. Nor their father, too engrossed in the seating chart printout he held to even look up. In the parking lot, as Adrian opened the door for her, Lila hesitated. "Don't make a scene," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm used to this." That sentence shattered something in him. It was quiet, but final. He didn't argue. He just kissed her forehead, closed the door behind her, and drove home. That night, under dim lighting and over cold leftovers, Adrian risked no on the wedding website. He didn't send a message. He didn't pick a fight. He simply bought a gift from Serafina's registry, a gleaming espresso machine that cost more than some people's monthly rent, and scheduled its delivery. Then he picked up the phone and made a different kind of call. To a private aviation company. "I want to book a helicopter," he said. "For when?" "The same day as the wedding," Adrian replied. "Exact time they're doing their photo session." He gave them the coordinates of the vineyard venue. Then he called a local print shop and requested a special job. He wasn't planning revenge. He was planning truth. Serafina had always been the polished one. Ever since childhood, she'd floated through life like she belonged in a movie montage. She was the homecoming queen, the debate team darling, the Instagram icon. Even as a child, she knew how to perform perfection, always hair-bowed and photogenic, always the center of attention. Adrian, older by 3 years, had been the shadow she stood in. He was the problem solver. The fixer. The silent support beam no one praised, but everyone leaned on. When their father forgot to pay the electric bill 2 months in a row, Adrian covered it. When Serafina's car broke down before prom, he maxed out his credit card to get it fixed. He co-signed the lease for her first apartment. Paid her rent when she lost a job. Bought groceries when she couldn't. Paid for the gym membership so she could decompress from stress. When their parents wanted to throw her a surprise birthday gala, he dropped $2,000 without blinking. They all said thank you once, maybe twice, but never in a way that truly meant anything. Because Adrian was Mr. Reliable. Mr. Responsible. Mr. Automatic Teller Machine. They didn't even notice the toll it took. But Lila did. "Why do you always pay?" she asked one night as he wired another $600 to his mother for just a few things. "Their family," Adrian answered. "So are we," she replied softly. "But you keep choosing them over us." He didn't have an answer then. He just kissed her and hoped it was enough. The real fracture began during Serafina's wedding planning. Her fiancé, Theo, was a finance bro turned boutique tech CEO. The wedding was set to be elevated pastoral fantasy, a vineyard rented for 3 days, with imported florals, custom wine labels, and enough silk to clothe a small town. Adrian had stayed silent, until the moment his mother called. "We're just a little short," she said. "How short?" She sighed like a wary actress. "Serafina's venue raised the price. Could you help out? Just this once." He didn't say yes. But he didn't say no. And that was his mistake. Because the next morning, Serafina texted, "Thanks for chipping in. The wine tasting upgrade is going to be amazing." Adrian called her immediately. "Who told you I agreed to pay?" "Oh, don't be stingy," she said, laughing. "It's my only wedding. You just bought a new car, right?" He clenched his jaw. "That was a necessity. My car died." "Well, I need a vineyard view," she shot back. "God, why are you always such a buzzkill?" 3 days later, Adrian found out that she had budgeted an extra $5,000 from his contribution. Everyone assumed he'd pay, including Lila. And yet, Lila wasn't invited. When he confronted his parents, they played dumb. "Well, you've always helped," his dad said, like it was a binding contract. "Don't ruin this for her," his mom added. "She deserves a perfect day. If Lila can't be a team player, maybe it's best she stays home." "You're serious?" Adrian asked. "She's stressed," his father replied. Weddings bring out emotions. Adrian walked out of their house that day and didn't look back. Lila sat on the couch when he returned home. Her glass of wine trembled slightly in her hand. "She texted me," she said. "Serafina?" he asked. Lila nodded. "Said it was a visual liability. That if you really cared about your family, you'd come alone." "Do I make you look small?" she asked. Adrian sat beside her and took her hand. "No," he said. "They do." That night, he pressed send on a short message. "We won't be attending. Hope the day is everything you dreamed of." Then he finalized the helicopter booking. He didn't want revenge. He wanted an ending. And he would give them one, high above their curated perfection, with the truth falling like snow from the sky. Before the helicopter, before the wedding fallout, before the fallout after the fallout, there was just Adrian. A boy growing up in a household where love came in fixed doses, depending on how photogenic you were. Serafina, with her porcelain skin and honey blonde curls, was camera-ready from birth. Teachers adored her, family fawned over her, and strangers on the street would compliment her like she was royalty dressed in kindergarten clothes. She was the golden child, the princess with a penchant for performance. Adrian was different. He wasn't overlooked because he lacked talent, but because his gifts were quiet. He could solve a problem in 5 minutes flat, find the missing remote, fix the leaky faucet, calculate the tip at dinner before anyone asked. His strengths didn't sparkle, they stabilized. And in his family, stability didn't turn applause. He became the background character in his own life. It started small. When Serafina needed a costume for the school play and their parents couldn't afford the materials, Adrian gave up his allowance for 2 months. When she accidentally backed into a pole in their father's car, it was Adrian who paid to have it fixed with the money he'd saved for a weekend camping trip with friends. No one said thank you. Not really. Not with sincerity. Not like they meant it. Instead, his mother would say things like, "Adrian's always so dependable," and his father would chuckle, "That's our Mr. Fix-It." At 15, Adrian thought it was a compliment. At 31, he knew it was a leash. By the time he'd graduated college with an architecture degree and landed a full-time job, his role had fully crystallized. He was the family's unofficial insurance policy. If something broke, Adrian would fix it. If someone forgot a deadline, Adrian would cover it. If Serafina wanted to take a month off to focus on content creation, Adrian would foot her rent. He'd barely noticed it happening, how one little favor became 2, then 5, then a lifetime. Even when he met Lila, he still hadn't broken free. Lila, a school librarian with sharp eyes and a sharp tongue, saw it instantly. On their 4th date, after watching him sell $400 to his dad with no explanation, she said bluntly, "You treat your family like they're your full-time clients. When do you get to be a person?" "They're my family," he replied automatically. "And we're not?" she asked, her tone soft, but her gaze piercing. That was when the cracks started to show. Adrian loved Lila with the kind of tenderness that felt unfamiliar to him, slow, unearned, unconditional. She didn't expect him to perform. She didn't make him prove himself every week with acts of service or sacrifices. She just wanted him to show up and be there. And for the first time, he had someone who noticed the weight on his shoulders, and wanted him to put it down. But the years of conditioning ran deep. Every time his mother called with another emergency, Adrian answered. Every time Serafina came up short on rent or wanted to invest in her brand, he sent the money. Every time their dad made vague comments about how the real measure of success is how much you can help others, Adrian absorbed the message, "You're only valuable when you're useful to us." Lila never forced a confrontation. She just kept asking the right questions. Why do they only call when they need something? Why do you always apologize for setting boundaries? Why is it okay for them to hurt me, but not okay for me to be upset about it? He didn't have answers. Only exhaustion. Then came the wedding announcement. The vineyard venue. The velvet invitations that arrived in thick envelopes like royal decrees. The whispers of imported wine, customized table runners, and the looming specter of a six-figure bill that was, somehow, everyone's problem except Serafina's. At first, Adrian kept his distance. He knew how these things went. Serafina had always curated her life like a photo album. Anything or anyone that didn't match the aesthetic got propped out. He just didn't expect that to include his wife. When Lila was formally uninvited, it didn't come in a text or a call. It came during a brunch, with Serafina sipping her matcha like it was liquid royalty, explaining how some people just don't photograph well in light pastels. The words hung in the air like smoke. Pastels, Adrian repeated that night, sitting in the living room in stunned silence. She uninvited you because of pastels? Lila just nodded. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, eerily calm. She said I wasn't elevated enough, Lila whispered. That I'd ruin her visual narrative. Adrian had grown up watching Serafina bulldoze through boundaries with grace and glitter, always excused by her charm. But this wasn't charm. This was cruelty. And their parents? Don't take it personally, his mother said when he brought it up. You know how Serafina is. That's exactly the problem, Adrian replied. You all know how she is, and you let her be that way. She's stressed, his father added, as if emotional abuse was a symptom of a bridal checklist. That's when it clicked. They didn't see Lila as family. And they didn't see Adrian as a person. He was a role. A function. An extension of their comfort. So, Adrian made a decision. No more explanations. No more arguments. No more just this once. He RSVP'd no. Sent the expensive espresso machine. And booked the helicopter. Not to get even. Not even to embarrass. But to free himself. He would give them the spectacle they craved. Only this time, it wouldn't be filtered or curated. It would be honest. And it would fall from the sky like judgment, silent, undeniable, and seen by every single person who'd ever clapped for Serafina's lies. The sun cast a golden haze over the vineyard, glinting off polished silverware and hand-blown glass goblets. The wedding venue, nestled between rolling hills and rows of ripening grapes, looked like a luxury magazine had come to life. It was everything Serafina ever wanted: delicate florals, gauzy white canopies, a string quartet playing covers of indie love songs. And, from a distance, Adrian watched it all unfold. He stood at the edge of the vineyard grounds, far enough to be unnoticed by the wedding staff, yet close enough to see the carefully staged chaos unfold below. Lila hadn't joined him. She didn't need to. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about retribution. It was about release. And about truth. He looked up at the sky. The hum arrived first, low, rhythmic, growing louder. Heads began to turn. Some guests shaded their eyes from the sun, squinting as the noise crescendoed into recognition. A helicopter? Someone said, confused. The music faltered. Chairs creaked as guests shifted, unsure whether this was part of the show or a high-budget surprise. Serafina, in her designer gown with a cathedral-length veil trailing behind her like spilled cream, glanced upward. Her eyes narrowed. Then widened. The helicopter hovered overhead, dipping low enough to cause the flower arrangements on the aisle tables to tremble. And then it began. It wasn't rice. It wasn't petals. It wasn't glitter. It was hundreds, thousands, of white cards fluttering from the sky like snowflakes. Each one delicately printed, glossy on one side, matte on the other. They danced on the breeze, catching the light as they tumbled. Guests reached out, some laughing nervously, others confused. Until they began to read. On one side, a black and white portrait of Lila. Not posed. Not filtered. Just her sitting in a sunlit cafe, mid-laugh, radiant and real. Honest. On the other side, a collection of text messages, screenshots preserved in cruel clarity. If he brings that librarian-looking wife, I'm cropping her out of every photo. Ugh, she ruins the aesthetic. We'll guilt him into paying half the wedding. He always folds. A heart emoji from their mother. A ha-ha from their father. A laughing face from Serafina's best friend. It wasn't just digital proof. It was documentation of betrayal, delivered like confetti from the heavens. Gasps rippled across the lawn. A bridesmaid dropped her champagne flute. A cousin stared, horrified. One of Theo's business partners muttered, "Is this some kind of joke?" Serafina screamed first. "What is this?" she shrieked, snatching a card midair, then another, and another. Her veil whipped in the wind like a flag of surrender. "Who did this?" The photographer, caught in the confusion, dropped his camera bag. The wedding planner barked orders at assistants scrambling to gather the cards. It was useless. They were everywhere, stuck in wine glasses, resting on flower petals, pressed against guests' shoes. Then, silence. Adrian stepped forward through the vineyard gate, walking calmly. His shoes crunched over fallen cards. Serafina spotted him. Her eyes flared with recognition and panic. "You," she shouted, barreling toward him in her $9,000 gown, makeup streaking beneath her eyes. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "I told you I wasn't coming," Adrian said, voice low but firm. "But you didn't listen. You never do." "This was my day," she cried, gesturing at the wreckage. "You ruined everything." Adrian didn't flinch. "No, Serafina. I revealed everything. You ruined this all on your own." Guests were no longer pretending not to stare. Phones were out. Cameras rolling. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" From behind Serafina, Theo, her fiancé, emerged, holding a few cards in his hand. "You told me you never said anything cruel about Lila," he said, his voice oddly steady. "I didn't mean it like that," she blurted. "It was out of context, just venting." He held up the card. "This was a week ago. I was stressed." "You're always stressed," he said. "But you didn't just insult Lila. You lied. You manipulated everyone, including me." He stepped back. "I need time to think." Then he walked away. Serafina looked like someone had drained all the color from her. Their mother appeared next, storming toward Adrian in a fury. Her lipstick smudged, heels digging into the grass. "How dare you humiliate your sister like this," she snapped. "You helped her humiliate my wife," Adrian said simply. "For months. Maybe years. Stop being dramatic." He pulled a card from his pocket, held it out. "Do you remember this one?" She paled. Said nothing. "I funded your lies," Adrian said, voice calm. "Not anymore." Somewhere near the cake table, a guest muttered, "He's right." Another nodded. "This is legendary." And then it happened, the moment Adrian didn't expect. Someone clapped. Just one person at first. A distant cousin, maybe. Then another. A few chuckles. A smattering of applause. Not loud. Not mocking. But approving. Adrian didn't bask in it. He didn't need to. He turned and walked away. Behind him, chaos buzzed like static, shouts, gasps, scattered arguments. But in front of him, silence stretched wide and clean. At the top of the hill, as he looked down on the venue, the rows of white chairs now abandoned, the petals trampled, the veil dragging through the dirt, he finally smiled. The truth had fallen like rain. And now, for the first time in his life, he was dry. 3 days after the wedding, Adrian scrolled through his phone at the breakfast table. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just browsing, mindlessly, while Lila stirred sugar into her coffee across from him. The peace between them was easy now. Clean. Still. Then a headline caught his eye. Helicopter drama at Luck's Vineyard wedding goes viral, guests showered in bride's dirty secrets. He clicked. There it was. A grainy video, captured vertically on someone's phone. The helicopter hovering. The cards drifting like ash. Serafina screaming. The crowd parting. The moment of raw truth exposed to the world. He expected to feel anxious. Maybe regretful. Instead, he chuckled. "Come look," he said, holding out his phone. Lila took it, watched the clip silently. When it ended, she set the phone down gently, exhaled, and smiled. "That's the first time anyone's defended me in public," she whispered. Then, to Adrian's surprise, she cried. Not the kind of cry that cracked open wounds, but the kind that let them close. The kind that washed the shame away. He pulled her into his arms and held her until her shoulders stilled. That night, they opened a bottle of wine they'd been saving. Not for a milestone. Not for revenge. Just because they wanted to. They sat on the floor, barefoot, snacking on olives and crackers, laughing like teenagers in love. They had never felt more like a team. And then the silence began. No calls from his parents. No long-winded voicemails from Serafina. Not even a single passive-aggressive text. At first, the quiet felt eerie. Wrong. Like the calm before another storm. But the days kept passing, And the silence remained. And it was beautiful. Adrian deleted the family group chat. Blocked every number except for his grandmother's. She was the only one who hadn't tried to guilt him, shame him, or demand anything. She called a week later. "I saw the video online," she said, barely able to contain her laughter. "You really dropped truth from the sky? That's one for the history books." "You're not upset?" Adrian asked, genuinely unsure. "Oh honey," she replied, "I always said that girl needed a lesson in humility. I just never expected it to come by a helicopter." He smiled, tension finally slipping from his shoulders. "Did I go too far?" There was a pause. "No," she said firmly. "You went high. They went low. You just flew over it all." Adrian had never felt prouder in his life. But peace doesn't last forever, not when people still feel entitled to you. Day 4 after the wedding. A call from an unknown number. His mother. "How dare you shame your sister in front of everyone," she snapped the moment he answered. "She's devastated. Her reputation is ruined." Adrian leaned against the counter, staring out at the late afternoon sun. "You all shamed my wife for years," he said calmly. Clipping her out of family photos, mocking her in messages, excluding her from events. "Serafina just got a taste of what she's been serving." "You're being dramatic," his mother hissed. "No," he said. "I'm being done." He hung up. The next day, his father called. His voice was weary, like the weight of public shame had finally cracked something. "You've made your point," he said. "Enough's enough." Adrian's voice was cold, detached. "Not quite. I haven't even released the rest of the screenshots." His father cursed under his breath. "So that's it? You're just done with us?" Adrian laughed softly. "I've been done. You just didn't notice until the money stopped." 2 days later, Serafina finally messaged. Just one line. "You've ruined everything." Adrian didn't reply. He forwarded the message to Lila with a laughing emoji. Lila wrote back, "You ruined her branding." It was true. Serafina's Instagram, once a meticulously curated haven of pastel perfection, had gone dark. No new posts. No stories. No wedding photos. Her once booming wedding inspo hashtag was now flooded with memes, screen-recorded TikToks, and blurry photos of the ruined ceremony. The comments were brutal. Imagine calling someone ugly while begging them for money. He dropped truth like it was rose petals. Icon. I hope he sent a Venmo request afterward. The internet never forgets. And Serafina's image, so carefully built, was now stained with reality. The biggest surprise came a week later. Theo, the groom. He messaged Adrian. On LinkedIn of all places. "Hey. Just wanted to say. Thank you. I didn't know half of what she said behind my back. You saved me from years of fake smiles. Coffee sometime?" They met at a quiet cafe 2 days later. Theo looked lighter. Like someone who'd escaped a cult. "I got lucky," he admitted. "You took the hit so I didn't have to." Adrian didn't need the gratitude. But it still felt good. Life didn't return to normal. It became something better. He and Lila began planning a trip, a real one. Somewhere quiet, by the ocean, with no dress codes or family group chats. They slept in on Sundays. Cooked dinner together. Fought about dishes, not dysfunction. And laughed. Truly laughed. The kind of laughter that felt like oxygen. Adrian didn't regret a thing. Not the helicopter. Not the cards. Not even the silence that followed. Because silence, he realized, could be healing. It was the absence of chaos. It was the space where love could breathe. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the phone rang. Adrian almost didn't answer. The number was private, no name, no region. And after weeks of silence, he'd grown used to the calm. He let it ring once. Twice. But something in his chest nudged him. He picked up. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then a familiar voice, soft and unfamiliar all at once. "It's me. Serafina." Adrian didn't respond. He could hear the sound of shallow breathing on the other end, like she was gearing up for a performance and couldn't find the right script. "I'm pregnant," she said quickly. Blurted, like it was meant to disarm him. Adrian sat down at the kitchen table. Outside the window, the wind rustled the garden Lila had planted, swaying lavender and basil gently in their planters. Silence stretched between them. "I'm pregnant," she said again, this time more slowly. "And I don't know what to do." Adrian didn't flinch. Didn't sigh. He just waited. "Anthony left," she continued. 3 days after the wedding. Said he couldn't deal with the lies. My friends stopped answering. Mom and Dad are too embarrassed to show their faces. And I just thought. She trailed off. Adrian could hear the unsaid words hovering in the space between them. You're the only one who's ever actually been there for me. There it was. Not a confession. A play. One last attempt at leveraging shared history into a lifeline. He could feel it again, that old pull. The instinct to step in. To fix. To protect. He'd always been the steady one, the quiet rescuer behind the curtain. But he wasn't that man anymore. Instead, he took a breath and asked, "Why are you telling me?" She didn't answer at first. "Because I thought maybe we could start over," she whispered. "Maybe family could mean something again." Her voice cracked. She started to cry, not the dramatic, camera-ready kind, but something smaller. Realer. Adrian stayed quiet for a long time. Long enough for Serafina to fall silent on the other end, too. Then he spoke, his voice calm, almost gentle. "You're about to become a mother. So let me give you something valuable." She sniffled. "Okay. Don't do to your child what our parents did to us," he said. "Don't teach them that love has to be earned through sacrifice. Don't teach them that being family means being useful. Don't raise them to believe they have to bleed to be seen. And whatever you do, don't use them to pull someone back into your orbit." More silence. Then a quiet, hollow voice, "I'm sorry." Maybe she meant it. Maybe she didn't. But Adrian didn't need to find out. "Take care of yourself," he said. And then he hung up. No rage. No fireworks. Just finality. He walked into the living room where Lila was curled up on the couch, a blanket over her legs and a novel in her hands. She looked up. "Who was it?" "Serafina," he said, sitting beside her. Lila closed her book. "Everything okay?" Adrian nodded. "She's pregnant." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Wow. She wanted to reconnect. Said she was alone. "And?" Lila asked carefully. "I gave her some advice," Adrian said. And then I hung up. She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Do you feel bad?" she asked after a beat. Adrian thought for a moment. Looked at their intertwined hands. The gentle light filtering in through the window. The scent of fresh herbs from the kitchen. "No," he said. "I feel free." He used to think being the bigger person meant staying. Forgiving. Bending. Paying, even when it cost more than money. But now he knew. Sometimes being the bigger person means walking away, and locking the door behind you. Because blood doesn't entitle anyone to your sanity. And history doesn't obligate you to keep bleeding so others can live in comfort. Adrian and Lila took that trip they talked about, a quiet beach town miles from the noise. No phones. No social media. Just silence, ocean air, and the kind of laughter that rises from healed places. They drank morning coffee barefoot on the porch. Held hands in the surf. Argued about which gelato was best, then kissed over scoops of both. They didn't talk about the past. They didn't need to. And one afternoon, as they flew home over the sprawling countryside, the plane passed over a small vineyard. Adrian looked down. He recognized it immediately, the rows of grapevines, the distant arch, the pale canopy still standing like a ghost of a day long buried. He smiled. He didn't feel anger. Didn't feel pride. He just felt distance. Above it all. 3 months later. He hadn't heard from Serafina again. Not a call. Not a text. Not a word. He didn't know if she was still in the city. Didn't know if she'd kept the baby. Didn't ask. Because freedom doesn't come from knowing all the answers. It comes from knowing what no longer needs your energy. He still talked to his grandmother. She mailed him a postcard every month, each one signed the same way. "Still proud of you. G." And every now and then, he'd come across one of those cards he had dropped from the sky, wedged into a book, tucked into a drawer. He never threw them away. Not as trophies. But as proof that the truth had finally been louder than the lie. He wasn't the villain. He wasn't the victim. He was the one who finally said, "Enough."